thank you so much for joining us for this episode of The Arts in Business. This is the first one of season 2, so we're bringing it back in 2025, which I'm really excited about. And what better person to have on for the first episode than Fiona Delaney? Hi, Fiona. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Sebastian.
So,
Great to join you.
so I met Fiona in 2023, just a couple of months after I came to Ireland. And she is just an incredible person that I'm excited to have a conversation with and about the intersection between arts and business. She herself, Fiona, sits at a very interesting intersection. Like I see yourself very much as an innovator and sitting between blockchain, sustainability, agriculture, building systems of trust and transparencies. You've been involved in a lot of projects over the last couple of years. You've have an artistic background. I know about that and I really want to get into that. But you've also moved into technology, into policy, into creating standards, working with C Blocks, working with Blockchain Ireland, as the recent chair of the startups and Web3 working group there, or former chair, I should say at this point.
Yeah.
And you've been in so many different industries and so many different places that it's really hard for me to sum you up. But I see you as an innovator, as a strategist, as a thought leader, sitting between academics, practice, and cutting edge technology, really interested in the real world applications as well. So I'd love maybe to start with just for you to introduce yourself in how you're currently sitting in your life and what you're doing and what you're up to, and what you want our listeners to know about you as we enter into this conversation.
Oh my God. Thank you very much for the intro, for the span, the breadth of activities, and trying to put a name on something. I guess in the late 1990s, I started, both in the world of work, in my arts practice, really developing it, finding out what that was. I had grown up playing music, and I had been quite involved in theatre and that kind of thing, dram soc, when I was in UCD back in the day. There were some amazing people there, and I loved the camaraderie of that. It reminded me of playing music in bands. So I'm a drummer, which surprises some people. And I guess I got really lucky when I left college. I was living on a boat in the middle of Dublin City with some friends who were quite bohemian. It was all very, ooh la la. And we were running out of money. So we didn't need much, but we were running out. We were getting hungry. We didn't have enough to sustain us. So I just walked up the river and walked into anywhere that had an open door and asked them if they needed, is there any work I could do, whatever. I was looking for something part-time. And I walked into the City Arts Centre, which is kind of opposite the Financial Services Centre. It's a bit ramshackle now, but at the time it was kind of a hive of amazing activity, all kinds of things. There was music recording studios, art studios. There was lots of training kind of stuff in there. And I just bumped into the director, and he had a spot, so I became his assistant. And he was busy, and he was very creative. He was a writer and a director and a performer himself. And there were so many things going on in the building. He wanted somebody who was able to pull together and communicate with this vast creative community, but also pull together, I would say, kind of mini activations, we would probably call them now if we're talking about marketing. But at the time, it was more like staged events or something like that, like micro events, something like that, that would mean something and communicate something both to internally to the staff and then externally to the community outside. So we were near Pearse Street, in the in the financial district in Dublin, and there was quite a dichotomy at that point in time between these two parts. So I had this like totally awesome job, just like make shit up and and pull it together,
Mm.
which I kind of did, and I kept playing a lot of music. And because there was music recording studios there, I got to meet more musicians and play more music. And City Arts Centre would have been part of what was called community arts practice, I suppose, back in the day. And that was very much about engaging and being active and being an activist. So I guess a big part of me, I guess, growing and learning to find my voice, use my voice, not just play percussion or drumming, was always probably pretty connected to activism. And this notion of dissent, not always dissent, but like of challenge, I would say. So,
Yeah.
so not being afraid to challenge a status quo or a consensus. And of course, because I was in the arts, having a unique voice or a unique point of view was super valuable. Like you were irrelevant if you didn't have something that was you, that was authentic. It could be constructed, and there was this real acceptance of that. So this is before everybody had avatars or an Instagram profile, which I would say is highly constructed. Um, in that world, which had actors, directors, writers, musicians, visual artists, filmmakers, everybody's being real, but also promoting not just a version of their own identity, but a version of the world that they either wanted to challenge or they wanted to see. So kind of utopia or like dark, like, like foreboding, this is the way it could go. It wasn't all just, I mean, there was a lot of fun and games and happy-go-lucky, but there was, I don't know, something thoughtful. There was the expectation of thoughtfulness, I would say. And, but no direction, it was really, 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 I think it was way more free then. Like there was no, this idea of being cancelled or something like that. That did not really exist then. There was a strong, I would say, cultural status quo. But in Ireland, I would say, particularly if you were a boy, everybody loved a maverick, everybody, mad
Yeah.
lad, the mad poet in a tree kind of thing. And people really admired writers, songwriters, performers, dancers. People really admired anybody who had a strong point of view and took the time to learn how to say that well, like crafting whatever that communication was. So, yeah, I kind of was raised in
That
that.
sounds like an amazing time. Yeah. Like an amazing utopia in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was, but it was also difficult times in the city, I would say. The Celtic Tiger began to happen in 1998, 1999. For some people, that was like game changing. I would say for the lower middle classes, for middle classes, that was like a time of rising wealth, but it was obviously a time, consequently, of growing inequality and disparity. So if you lived in the city centre, there was still a lot of perhaps more division caused by things like drugs, heroin epidemic, that kind of thing. All of that stuff was in the like 1980s, 1990s, and parts of the city were ravaged by that. So parts of the inner city, um, and I think you can see that in some of the great talents. For example, Patrick Kavanagh, he didn't die from drugs, but drink and alcohol was a big part of his demise. He was really influential on me, um, as a poet and a writer, and the simplicity of, you know, making your farm or your landscape your epic was something that stayed with me forever, I would say. And then similarly, at the time, 2000, a former poet laureate of Ireland, a woman called Paula Meehan from the North Inner City, published a book of poems called Dharmakaya, which is based on the Tibetan Book of the Dead, I think. And she wrote these amazing, simple, beautiful, thoughtful works that were so powerful, like the power of simple words and thoughtfulness, you know. I found that really, really affecting. And I had the opportunity to meet Paula a few times actually.
Amazing.
And I even played with a young songwriter who had put some of Paula's works to music, including the lovely poem "Take a Breath, Hold It, Let It Go," where Paula's remembering balancing on the wall at the back of her house in Finglas, or she's watching her sister actually on the wall, I think, and she's willing her sister to not fall off, to just take a breath, hold it, let it go, and that sense of balance and risk and being in the flow and how you can be observed, like that's almost motherly, yeah, or parental, you know, like looking at something like, don't let it happen. I just thought it was all so powerful, like how, and as a drummer, I was like, you can use words to stop time. Like to me, that was like amazingly powerful, you know? Um, and so, yeah, I mean, God, I'm
Yeah.
really
I mean, that sounds.
reminiscing here about the
But
things that influenced me. But yeah, it was, even though I'm a musician, even though I've had a number of exhibitions and worked in film as on the artistic side, like the, you know, art direction, head of costume, very visual kind of practices, actually it's words that have really been the thing that caused the biggest momentum for me. And I
interesting.
think that is why I do what I do now, and why that
Yeah.
transition when it came from the arts, which was kind of related to the banking crisis,
Mm.
and having to, instead of playing around, had to go make a living.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't
uh,
know that. That's really interesting that you're saying that words had the biggest impact. Because for me, like I've always associated you with music and the visual stuff. So it's really nice to get that. Like, and the way that you just described that image of her poem is so vivid. It's so, it really, yeah, it's kind of seems like a core memory of yours that sits within you in a
but
really nice way.
also, I think when I was thinking about talking to you about this, I was going, yeah, Sebastian, you know, he's an opera singer and his breath work is like so important to him. And so I think I remembered that. And I think for singers, that breath control, that stopping time, that controlling emotion, like the emotional experience of the audience with your breath,
Hmm.
you know, there's a resonance in everything, but that stopping and starting, like controlling
Mm,
of tempo and emotional release. It's quite percussive, actually.
it
I
is,
think.
yeah.
I mean, that's how I understand it. I'm not a singer, so I don't know.
No, but it is. And I mean, the drummer in you is coming out in that, right? Like, I'm thinking about the rhythm that like, drummers are natural rhythm keepers in a way, and you dictate how the music is going to go, and you're holding the band together in that sense, because if you fall apart, all of the rest is going to fall apart. So there's this kind of natural.
For sure. It's not only the drummer is not the only person responsible for that, but
Yeah,
particularly in like kind of like rock and roll or blues
yeah,
or jazz in particular, like everybody is responsible for it, but everybody, like in a jazz band, everybody's breaking the rules within the rules kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
So you've got to hold it down. You got to know when to fly or take the opportunity to fly, and then and you can and depending on the context or the world that you're in, you can be as challenging or as unique or as dissonant or harmonious or whatever. You get a lot of choice there.
yeah.
And that comes down to your ability, your intelligence, your imagination, and massively your empathy. I don't think you can play in a band if you don't have empathy.
So tell me more
Loads of
about that.
stupid people can play music,
Mhm. Yeah.
play it well, and to play for an audience, you need empathy.
Tell me more about that. Tell me more about the empathy and how that shows up in in your context, in the context of drumming, at least in that sense, where we're still in the kind of very early part of your artistic professional life.
Yeah, like in the early days, I was, you know, I don't know if anybody would ever say I was the most technical drummer, but I was a really good listener. I was very, very concerned with the song that we were playing, the tune that we're playing, the tune that we're in, the space that we're in. I always played with very, can I say, like, improvise, bands that would improvise a lot. And so you need a lot of confidence, you need a lot of assurance, you need a point of view, you need to be supportive, and you need to, you need to be able to take risks, because that is a very risky context. A lot of musicians don't like that, actually. That, like a lot of
I
people,
don't. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's a really, really different thing, but it's for me. And because I loved that, because it was about, I think, risk and reward. It was like, feel the fear, absolutely chase it. I mean, I was fearless in
Yeah.
many ways in music. And I got to play with some of, Ireland's really, really wonderful songwriters for many, many years. And to have, and our strength was our performances, those unique. For me, it always felt like we were plugging back into the same song, but every single time was different, because the audience were like the big hungry animal that we were feeding. And as a drummer, like, I would always be looking out for the quality of the silence in the room from your audience, like how much they're listening, and who's tapping their feet, who's jumping up to dance, who's like, if you're a drummer in the line of business that I was in, like, if people weren't dancing or tapping or bobbing their heads, you were not doing your job. Like, if people were not participating, you were irrelevant. Like, you just wouldn't get a call
Mm.
back again. I mean, it's just,
Yeah. Yeah.
so audience is huge. Uh, the people you're playing with, you have to be, the empathy piece is important for becoming attuned very quickly with what your fellow performers need. Not everybody needs to be your friend. Some people want to be your enemy in music. They want to be head to head. They want, like, like
Yeah.
two guitar players or two soloists. They want to be in contention. And then what does that do with the rest of the band? I was in the back line, so um yeah, you've got to
Yeah.
work all that stuff out. And how you are in music is not the same as how you are with your fellow bandmates outside of that, like the
Mm.
green room or before or after or whatever. And you need to be very attuned to, you need to understand quickly what your other fellow musicians need from you, and from each other and from the collective, because you got to make it happen in performance.
It's just, it amazes me because I'm thinking about, I tried drumming once, and it was just physically very demanding in terms of your coordination and your feet and your hands and your that. And then you're sitting in the back of the band and you're observing everything and you're describing, listening to
Oh,
the
you're
audience and
listening?
looking at the
Sometimes
audience.
you're observing, but like, you're more
Yeah.
listening than anything.
Okay. Yeah.
And one time is not enough. I mean, like, that's just
No,
utter.
I know.
And
I was like this
for sure,
after
that's
this.
utter confusion.
That's for, yes, but it gave me a little bit of an insight of like, okay, physically, there's a lot going on already. And
It's
then,
beautiful.
yeah,
It's beautiful because it's so symmetrical. You need to have such strength and such core stability, to be able to move, and to do what you want, and to be able to, like, you, so you're pattern matching all the time, and you're swapping different limbs. You can take a pattern you're playing up here and put it on your other foot down here, or you can split it up and distribute it.
yeah,
Um, I mean, for sure you need to practice.
mm,
You definitely need to
it's,
practice.
yeah,
Um, but it's
it's amazing.
glorious. It's
Yeah,
physically, it's really, it's
Yeah.
kind of glorious, you know?
It's just amazing that you layer the listening and the empathy on top of that. It fascinates me.
It
Yeah.
makes it easier though, because
Mm,
you've got like, you're following maybe a melodic thread here on your this hand. I'm like
yeah.
tapping away over here.
As you
And then
lift your right hand, yeah.
something else is happening here, and you're breathing in the middle, and you're outsourcing to your limbs. So you've got the rhythm in mind, and you know where your hits are, and like like a, I don't know, there's a move. It's like
Yeah,
dancing. There's a
yeah.
move that you make happen, and you anticipate it, and you're just in the flow, and it
Amazing.
is glorious.
Yeah. Incredible. So you're in your core, you're holding all of that. You've had these experiences. I think I'll move us over to the financial crisis, sadly, and what happens next in your life. I mean, it
And
sounds like that was an incredible moment of um, being in tune with yourself and exploring the world and living in this vibrant environment and ecosystem. Um,
yeah, so I mean, I played right up until like halfway through the pregnancy, my second pregnancy, which is funny. But so if we say the banking crisis kind of happened, really began to happen like 2007 into 2008. My first baby was born, Kieran, in 2008. And my second was born in 2010. And when I was in hospital with him, that's when the IMF was here and everything, you know? So we had gone into like national receivership, for want of a better
yeah,
conversation. When I came back home, yeah, I was really concerned because up until that point, even so, Kieran, my eldest, was about 2 at this stage. My husband is a writer. We were able to kind of like make a living between, writing and working in the arts, working in film, playing gigs. We had pretty cultured life. It was simple. We weren't making loads and loads of money, but we had a house, we had a mortgage, we were, able to, live our lives. We had like amazing friends who were in kind of similar circumstances. I would say it was the confluence of banking crisis, but also the beginning of digital transformation, I would say. So for like my husband, who's a writer, publishing changed a lot. Mm, like who books that get published now are kind of AI constructs,
yeah. We'll
Um,
get into that later. Yeah,
So, what were we going to do? At the time, I was working with South Dublin County Council for their in the arts office, working with their public arts program and working with the development side of things um, in Clondalkin, in North Clondalkin, which would have been, I guess, considered an area of kind of underdevelopment. And of course, I enjoy everything, so I had an amazing time working there. And I made some short films that won some awards, and worked with a dancer and a choreographer called Rena Nail, and we worked with the youth clubs there. I made a beautiful work called Between Earth, Sky and Home about the suburban landscape of North Clondalkin and the lives of the young children who were between the ages, I'd say, of like 7 and probably 14 or 15. And that film, I think, went on to win for Kitog, was the dance company, went on to win a couple of awards in Europe. I also did some wonderful work with another poet, Dermot Bulger, who had won bursary with I don't even know if bursary is the right thing. He had won a commission from the Public Art Fund. Adamstown was a whole area it's called South Dublin County Council, but really that's like Tallaght, Clondalkin, that kind of area. And Adamstown had been commissioned and was starting to be built. And 10% of that, up to probably something like 20 million, had to be allocated to public art programs. So there was a whole bunch of different commissions, and Dermot Bulger was one of those. So I touched base with him and told him that I was the liaison at North Clondalkin, and I gave him a tour of the area and introduced him to some of the local community groups. And when we were in the Clondalkin, it was like a drug support center, community support center, in the shopping center. We were kind of locked in because some ruffians were firebombing the door. And while we were locked in there, we were um, sitting in the kitchen talking. They had a support group for grandparents who had taken over raising their grandchildren because their children were no longer around. So either they had sadly passed away, or maybe they were homeless, or they might have been in prison or something like that. So Dermot was sitting in the kitchen talking to these grandparents, and he just became so angry that they could be these amazing people, like heroes of a generation, like life-saving uh, actions, basically, to take on their young children and or their young grandchildren, and to support them. You know, this is a part of the city where, I mean, generational unemployment is a thing. So some of the grandparents, had not worked themselves in a long time, or would have had their own struggles, I would say, both with finances, maybe with health. Obviously, losing your children, there's an awful lot of grief there. So these people are just doing their best. And isn't it amazing that there's this community center that's running, this support group where they can kind of get together and support each other. And then in the face of that, they can't even get out after lunch, because the doors are closed, because local ragamuffins are kind of firebombing the door. And so he wrote this amazingly powerful poem about the grandparents, which went on to be published in a number of different publications. We also bought some advertising in the local newspapers to kind of, it was a full page ad,
Nice.
but it had also that group had been part of a European funded project, where other grandparents were taking an active role in community activism. If you imagine that being a grandparent, becoming a parent is like
Yeah.
maybe a great act of activism. So across Europe, they had this program that was really, I guess it was about policy and change, an open conversation. And so the group from North Clondalkin went, and as part of that conference, they had performed that amazing poem. And so
Amazing.
that experience for many of those people, this had hardly anything to do with me. I just happened to be there and maybe make the connections. Again, that piece of poetry and how powerful that was for the people that I met that day in the kitchen with Dermot Bulger, and how amazing it was for them to be seen and heard and cared about through words again was just phenomenal. I'm just grateful to have had those type of collaborations or experiences with communities, with artists. And I'm really glad that some of the, Percent for Art scheme went to
Yeah.
something like that was really impactful on I know I was there. I know that was really impactful on the lives of the people who
Yeah.
were there, who that I think the impact of that was amazing. Because my entire project was all about landscape. So it was about suburban, I think I called it suburbia. So everything I did was kind of uh, centered around this idea of North Clondalkin being a little bubble in suburbia. and everything was a little bit at a distance or a little bit removed. And so Dermot Bulger, actually, as part of his program, then went on to commission a series of murals that were painted on different places around North Clondalkin, which, there were many derelict shops, there was many, closed up buildings, that kind of thing. So it wasn't always the prettiest place to be. So that was the thing that he did. He hired, around the corner from the grandparents thing, was a man painting Mickey Mouse on the wall of the creche.
Yeah.
And Dermot, literally made
Took
a
the thing.
deal,
Yeah.
painting the creche, and said, I want some murals around North Clondalkin. You're the man for me. So the pair of them got on like a house on fire. And there was these amazing murals that stayed undefaced for many years, actually, after that.
Are they still there? Are parts of them still there?
Parts of them might be, I would say, in
Okay.
the drug project, because that one was they had like a little patio area, and it was on the side of their building, which was enclosed. So
Mm-hmm.
that one has every chance of still being there.
All right.
Some of the other ones may not.
Yeah.
Actually,
Oh,
Dermot also commissioned a light show.
wow.
So the words were kind of this was in Clondalkin Centre, and this was, I think it was on the longest day of the year, which is probably not a great day to do a light show. But yeah, it was kind of beautiful. The words were projected onto the ground of a couple of different poems, kind of place names. He's big into like street names, place names,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of resonance kind of stuff. So yeah,
Mm. So you have
yeah,
you
yeah.
have yeah, you have these amazing, wonderful experiences in the art world. Um, how do you then how did you end up in technology and coding and blockchain?
That
Very kind of
was
deep tech in a way. Yeah.
okay. So banking crisis happened. Second child was born. That had been a difficult birth, so I came out of hospital on quite a lot of drugs. The IMF was here, and all the rest of it. I went to the bank and took all my savings out and put it into prize bonds. It was 2010. I had not yet heard about Bitcoin. If there's a regret,
Yeah.
that might be it. And I just thought, oh my God, I thought my life was precarious already. Maybe, maybe there's a lot more uncertainty in our future. And I had a look at, I've got two babies now. Publishing is changing. The landscape for my husband was a best-selling author and things like that. But, things were changing in publishing. And I thought one of us has to get a job in the real world, you know? So it took me a little while to pivot. I kind of thought, I'll just go more commercial with the art stuff. I was working, in TV, film, that kind of thing. I didn't like it. It was too close to what I did before, and I had no like author control. So I didn't like that. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna have to turn my back on this thing, whatever, this voice thing, this artistry thing, this passion, desire, because I find it really stressful trying to raise my babies and not know where, how we're going to pay our way. And one nice thing about post-banking crisis and all that stuff was everybody was kind of in the same boat. Everybody was a little bit poor, a little bit uncertain. So it's like, it's fine if you're all poor together. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like, had time, I guess. It didn't, and a lot of my friends were kind of retraining, I would say, in that kind of transition. I had a degree already, so I went into a conversion course in computer science. I would have said I was an advanced user of technology before that, recording stuff, film stuff, image making. it's of course, it's like people who watch movies, oh, they're very discerning. And then you give them a camera. It's a bit like you one day as a drummer, you're like, oh my God, there's so much to this. So, and the same thing with computer science. Like, you're not in Kansas anymore. You're
Yeah.
not trying to like express yourself. You're trying to make machines talk to each other. That's it. Now you're in a completely different realm. The really nice things is that machines talk to each other like drummers do. They kind of go tap, tap, tap. So I was like into it, It was like patterns and pattern matching, and um, there was like the simplicity of repetition, all that kind of thing. So I kind of loved it. It was hard. Computer science has a lot of acronyms and a lot of different ways of thinking about things, and um, a lot of different models, but I'm a very abstract thinker. I would say I think that's like a superpower for me, is a very, very abstract thinker. Um, so none of that stuff fazed me. And I came out of that with a first, got straight onto a master's in software engineering in DIT at the time, TU, and came out of that with a first. And I was looking at the world around me going, am I going to go into the milk round? Am I going to get a job in Ericsson along with all these 20-something-year-olds? Or am I going to take a punt? I had gone to this, it's like a founders night there's an international organization called the Founders Institute. And it's run by this guy, personality dude. He used to be Elon Musk's roommate whenever Elon Musk was in university. I don't think he stayed for very
Yeah, it
long,
was
but
a brief
so
moment.
ADRSC was his, and I believe it. He definitely has, he's got
Yeah.
the stick, right?
Yeah.
So, and it was sort of like an evening of sort of like micro pitches and stuff like that, but a day of racy live. It was sort of like Joe Rogan meets a startup weekender. It was fairly brutal. Everybody up on the stage coming up with running the gauntlet and really getting milled out of it. It was a bit of a roast. I kind of loved it. I was like, oh my God, this is so competitive. This is almost like rap battles, It was like, oh, I kind of like this. And it took me, so that was while I was still, doing all that conversion course stuff. And in the back of my mind, I was kind of, I bet you I could bullshit my way onto one of those things. Like, but, it would have to be something good enough. So when I was coming up to doing my thesis, I was either going to look at neural networks, TensorFlow, image manipulation and image creation, and that would have been sort of beautiful. And I'd be an AI developer now.
Yeah.
um, or I was going to go into something a little more, what I thought at the time was kind of community focused, which was blockchain. And I thought at the time, I thought long and hard about it. And I thought that if I did the TensorFlow image thing, it was close enough to what I was doing before. And it had been painful for me. Like, it had been difficult to turn my back on it. And I felt like it was too close, and that, I had decided I was moving on. So I was going to move on. So I embraced the world of decentralized finance, of crypto, of blockchain, of the freedom and the dreams, the imagination, so much innovation, so much optimism. I would say too much optimism, maybe, and just really embraced that, and came up with a couple of different ideas, and got quite a good bit of feedback, I would say, from like the startup world. Um, I mean, I hadn't set up my company and anything else, but I explored a few different options. Um, Fashion, athleisure wear, supply chain stuff. I made a Patreon
Hmm.
like thing on Ethereum for fans to support footballers. It was like I made loads of different things and totally loved it. And loved the connectivity of it. I loved the newness of it. I loved the requirements gathering. I loved everything about it, and it felt more like, I would say, the community development side of the things I'd been engaged with before. And also, it was like a lot of that stuff that sort of even though I was working with poets and painters, a lot of it is business relationship management, right?
Yeah.
And funding relationship management.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it wasn't so different. And I was like, oh, remember that I'm good at this stuff. Coming out of the arts, moving into the world of technology, I moved quite quickly into tech resource in the business side of things because I was very good at communication, good with words. And also, when I was coding, if I was plugged in, like a lot of time could pass before I would like notice. So I can remember sometimes, taking my headphones off and looking at my kids going, oh shit, did I forget to feed you? And not just like 30 minutes late. I mean, like 4 hours later, I'm like, okay, so I either need a babysitter, nanny, or I need to like rethink this. So, yeah.
Mm.
Anyway, found my niche,
Yeah.
set up a
You said,
company,
mm-hmm.
did a whole bunch of stuff, did a lot of proof of concept, sometimes collaborated a lot with other researchers, um, in the agriculture sector, for the Department of Expenditure and Reform. Um, yeah, some public admin side stuff. At the time, I really did think there was money available in Europe to roll out national resources. The EBSI program had begun. They were looking for early adopters. So, like lots of European funding, it's like the government needs to apply for the money to build a road. The money is there. All you have to do is apply for it in the proper way with the proper suppliers and everything. In this instance, proper suppliers would have been universities. So there's plenty of universities who wanted to take part. But I don't know whatever happened at the heart of the government. They turned their back on the potential for blockchain as a public administration resource. And so for me, that was the signal to look elsewhere outside of Ireland. So
Mm-hmm.
I worked a good bit in Spain, sometimes in Italy, a little bit in Bulgaria, Slovenia, with the Croatians and Serbs. Did some stuff in the UK, France. Yeah, worked
Nice.
Netherlands.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Like
loads and
really
loads of different
across Europe.
places.
Yeah.
And and made a lot of things. And in that kind of world of sort of making, and this could be on the protocol side of things, like the blockchain protocol side of things, you can get grants to build things that are interoperable for the community. Similarly, for the European Commission, you get grants to build things that are supportive of the European social missions, privacy, citizen first. How can I say vendor lock-in? No. So, this idea of digital sovereignty is very, very important. I mean, we just see what's happening in the US right now. This whole concept of sovereignty is having a kind of rejuvenation, I would say, having this sort of total globalism view where, like, for example, Ireland in food production, we went 100, almost 100% into grassland, livestock management. We overproduce for our population by 600% in beef. Um, I don't think there are any flour mills left here, for example. So even if you did grow grain here, you would have to export it to mill oats,
Yes.
flour, whatever.
Yeah.
So then you're getting into big
Mm.
costs just to reestablish lost
Mm.
industries and things like that.
Yeah.
Very, I would say, very, very constructed
Mm-hmm.
economy. Agro economy is what we have. And then we've got this sort of quiet piece, which is pharmaceutical, which is a big part of our GDPR, but it's all kind of B2B behind those gates kind of thing.
Yeah,
Much less visible. We know about it, but we don't see it much. And then, of course, we've got data centers.
many of them. I think the one thing that really kind of sticks to me is you said this multiple times. It was very hard to turn your back on your artistic practice and being an artist. Um, do you still feel like that? Do you feel like you really turned your back on it?
Because, oh my God, I discovered, despite my own prejudices, that actually being in business is very creative.
And it sounds like there's a lot of like just hearing you speak and hearing the kind of artist journey, the business journey. There's so many different intersections, like the grant, the funding, the money, the managing of just the day to day of even being able to exist and function as a business and as a human. There's that part. There's the creativity part of building things and constructing things and ideating. Different types of projects and protocols and ways to interlink things each other. So, tell me about that intersection. Tell me about the things you discovered as you are seeing connections between the artistic practice that you have or had and the work that you're doing now.
So for me, having that hinterland, that kind of body of work, which was a really high standard. So I know I've described it as working in community development, but I'd also, gotten grants myself from the Arts Council to produce work. I'd had exhibitions in Berlin and in Brazil and in the UK, as well as here. I was confident as as a creator or as somebody with, you know, a strong point of view that had an effect. There's something really, really powerful about meeting like an audience member who like encounters your work, whether it's music or a song on the radio or an exhibition or picks up a book that maybe you put together or something like that, and they get it. Like that emotional connection is super powerful. It's super rewarding, and nothing in technology feels like that. Everything in technology is making machines talk to each other.
Hmm.
So that emotional connection is lacking, but I turned my back on that side of my life when I had my children. So I get a lot of that from my family, I would say. Th- you know, I guess, and it was definitely feeling like my work or this was distracting me from my children, that was something that and I know that other artists made different decisions. Um, and I don't know which is, uh, everyone makes their own way and
Yeah.
everyone has something that they look back and say, I know that I made a choice. Right, wrong, whatever, it doesn't really matter. It's like there's points along the way where you're making choices. Um, and those were my choices, and they were difficult, and I stuck with them. Interestingly enough, a friend of mine said to me, like, when I was kind of starting on my arts career as such, not just like working in the art center, but like making more of it. She was like, "Oh my God, you're such a Renaissance woman. How, are you going to pick one?" And I said, "No, no, I'm not going to pick one.
Yeah.
Because for me, they're like spiders, like in a web or something. It's all the means of communication. And now, like post Google, post smartphones, post whatever, everybody is a Renaissance person.
Mm.
Everybody is multiply enabled, and the way that they communicate is an expression which is multi-platform and Renaissance like. It can feel overwhelming for sure. I think like a crisis of our times is like too much stuff, too much.
Too much. Yeah. Yeah.
But I think I think we're all going to get over that. I mean, if I look at my kids, they're just so much, they're so well balanced, even though they have all these things. I mean, look, long may that last, right? I'm not going to,
Touch wood, yeah.
yeah. So then, okay, there's a few things that I think pull together. I'm driven by, I call it desire, and that is Paula Meehan back. If I'm allowed to skip back a
Yeah, of
second,
course
Paula
you
Meehan.
are. You could skip back, forth, middle, everywhere.
She had a poem called "The Exact Moment I Became a Poet," and she said it was when she was in school. And the poem itself is very simple and quite moving. But at the very end, she says the end of the poem is, "Words could pluck you and leave you naked, and your shiny, lovely feathers are all gone." And I remember reading that going, that's true, but words can also embrace you in feathers or fur or jewels and leave you, adorned and and dress you. And at the time, like in 2000, before I went to Brazil, I was, using my words uh, to describe the world or what my work would be or whatever. It was hard. It was not simple. It's, the horror of a blank page and all that kind of thing. But sometimes I would pick up my pencil and be writing, and I would feel like in my stomach, like, oh my God, the power of a panther or something. Like I'm running through long grass and I'm hunting meaning or words like prey, and regardless of whether I got there, that feeling, like the opposite of being naked and plucked, it's like, it's the direct opposite of that. That also comes with words and like a practice like poetry, like
Mm,
artistry or something like that. That sense of power and influence is so, I mean, it's really powerful. And I guess having had that in my life, and having the pursuit of that, having driven my success in many facets in my life, I feel assured, and that's important. As in an innovation space, whether that's an art space or a business space, feeling assured, um, and knowing how to. In business, we don't really empathize with the people. We empathize with the data or
mm-hmm.
market analysis or something. But
Yeah,
that's a way of empathizing or understanding, right? And so in performance, maybe more so than an artistic practice. But even if you're like a script writer, if you are a scriptwriter and that film gets made, and of course there's so much collaboration and there's so much junk that can be thrown in the road, but your movie gets made and people love it or hate it or respond or have an emotional reaction. It's exciting. And then in business, you've got this other thing, which is, I mean, I say it in the blockchain world to the baby blockchainers, it's like you're building something, your app, your wallet, your transaction module, your smart contract, whatever it is. You don't do it for yourself. You want to get your song on the radio. Like there's nothing better than users using your stuff. There's nothing better in the wild. Not your mom, not your brother, not your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever, or your kids in my case. Real people using it in the wild. Get your song on the radio. That's magic. That is magic, especially when you're building new stuff. So it's
yeah,
got actually quite a lot similar to the arts, and finding an audience.
yeah. I think, yeah, the finding the audience, and like what I'm thinking about is creating something that interests you, but then finds a resonance in the audience as well. I think that's such a special place. Like if I think about art that is being made, that is kind of, I mean, you see this with young artists who are going to college, that's very self obsessive in a way. And then as
I
they
think
open
that's
up
the
and
first
learn,
step, though.
that's the
I
first
think
step.
it's the
Yeah,
first step.
it
You
is.
create your identity first.
Yeah, and you see the same. Well, at least I've seen the same in the blockchain space, right? When you see people who are starting out building their projects and entrepreneurs, it's something that they're obsessing about, really excited, and they love it for themselves. But then from a business perspective, we question, like, is this an idea that's worth, like, it's going to have market traction and all of that? Will it? Maybe it won't. But you need to go through that process, and then at
You
some
do.
point you find there's that one thing that resonates with the audience, exactly that moment that you described, where someone comes up to you and they've used your solution or they've used your services and it's helped them. And that, for me at least, from the entrepreneurial side, that strikes so much with the artist side. It invigorates you because you know that you're being of service, and you are what you're creating and putting out in the world is creating something, a
Not
ripple,
only that,
positive or
you're not
negative.
just
Yeah.
making a thing, though, you're making a world. When we
Yeah.
work in technology,
Hmm.
our technology is not alone. Like, we're
Hmm.
not making a hammer that exists. We're
Yeah.
making something on top of other things, connected to other things that other people will hopefully build upon and be inspired by. So I was thinking about, like, what do I think comes first? And of course it all comes together. But I think in the making of an innovator or an entrepreneur, or if we think about, like, how do you make an artist? Like, what does it, how, for me anyway, right? Like, the portrait of the artist is you create the identity, you imagine a world for better or worse, right? You could hate that world or you could love that world, or you could fear that world, or you could be seduced by that world, or you feel something. There's a world that you imagine that at that point that you're imagining it may or may not mean anything to anybody else. So you're creating your identity, you're imagining a world, practicing your artistry, your skills, whatever those things are, because those are the tools that you are going to express your identity, imagine that world, create that world together. And then you're going to conjure your audience through your artistry. Like, if you're a shit drummer, nobody will listen to you. So your world and your identity will not go anywhere. It doesn't mean they're shit. It means that your drumming is shit and nobody wants to listen to you. But if you want to conjure an audience, you have to seduce them. You have to make them dance. You know, there's only so much rage punk noise that can exist out there that people, like, turn off. Some people love that stuff. It's a pretty niche thing, right?
Yeah.
But, like, you've got, there's a seduction there as well, like that white noise, charm, whatever that is. It's an appeal to that audience. So you've got to conjure it, and it's work, sweat, and tears. It's not 90 seconds on a catwalk with the hair, the glam, the everything. It's like it's work. It comes from your artistry, practicing that artistry. It's an expression of the world that you've imagined, and it is anchored in your identity. So all of that stuff, the audience, yourself, it's together. I don't think you can do it without that. There's many different types of art forms, including architecture, but a building out in the forest and nobody can walk into,
Yeah.
does it even matter?
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
mystery only goes so far, you
Yeah.
know? So, and it's not always pretty. Like, there was something you said earlier on about, I can't remember what exactly you said, but you're creating your identity. You, as the person, you could hate that identity. Like, that identity can be set to challenge something, a worldview. It can be very, very personal. It can be centered in trauma. There's so many different people in the world who can create things and be things and, set themselves up. Like, Elon Musk totally has an identity, right? And he is 100% conjuring, like, he's imagined a world somewhere else, or he's imagined a world where he can get loads of people to give him money to go to Mars, and we'll never get there. Either way, that's a big that's a big vision of a world, and he is practicing. He is an amazing communicator at scale. That is his artistry, I would
Yeah.
suggest.
Yeah.
And what is he doing? Look at that audience he has conjured, which is support for his companies. And what is his legacy? It remains to be seen. But I mean,
But yeah.
Cybertruck is a
Oh God.
powerful legacy. But look
Yeah.
at the companies. Look at the
Yeah.
uh, look like, you know, big social change. I would say he's ridden the wave of massive social digital change, and that goes back to like, what are we doing, and what, the time that I was moving into technology, we were facing into a world of massive digital transformation, probably enhanced by COVID, which brought on a lot more people into the digital realm, digital communications, that kind of thing. And we find ourselves here and now with lots of large language models, lots of assistance tools, lots of, and many different consenting, dissenting, excited, horrified voices around all of these different changes, all of which is food for the
Yeah.
creative types.
It is. Yeah.
So yeah, it's like, I feel really grateful that I am in technology at this time. I'm glad that I'm not afraid of it. I'm glad that I know how to make machines talk to each other,
Mm.
you know, make them make
Mm-hmm.
music together.
Mm.
um, yeah, we're still this big community. Like, it's still there's still audience, there's still collaboration, there's still uh, amazing outcomes. There's still so much to build, and in increments, a little app, a little website, a new way of doing something, a new way of connecting, a new problem to solve. That's all within our fingertips. That's super exciting.
Yeah. And
I
I
mean,
think the other thing that you're really good at too is not just making machines talk to each other, it's making people talk to each other. And in a way that's really
sometimes.
sometimes, but that the community aspect, right? You are a really great community builder in that sense, and the work that you've done in terms of building the startups community in Ireland is commendable and inspirational in that sense. So it's you're from the art, like just to connect that to the artist perspective or your other life in that way, the connecting the different disciplines. You were a drummer or you are a drummer, um, but words really affected you, and you understand visuals and that visual language and how to bring people into that world. Um, and that's not that different to what you're doing now in a way. You're adding multiple layers of communication. You're adding the communicating with machines and people communicating with machines, but also people with people, and you're understanding that intricacy of these different networks that need to exist and the connections. And I think that's
That they need to, but that they can. Like, that's enough for me.
hmm hmm
Because it's not just about being a drummer. It's been like, I'm a musician who played with other musicians. Like, so for me, I'm at my happiest when the band is playing together. The band for me, the band don't have to like each other. I've played in loads of bands where people hate each other. We can still make amazing music, right? So I don't have an expectation that it's smooth, or that it's about love, or that it's about, happiness. But it's about the challenge of making something together. I do think in art, I think artists struggle. I think struggle is a part of art, right? I don't think, yeah, I don't know what way to say that, but the struggle uh, is intrinsic. And when we think about musicians playing together, even if you could be playing the same song you've played like a wedding band forever and ever and ever, and our band was not a wedding band, but we played a lot of the same music. But every time we played it, it was different.
hmm
It felt like we were plugging in, but it was a fresh page or a fresh iteration. And I never knew what the guitarist was going to do, or, the bass player was going to do, or if we had a fiddle player, I never knew what he was going to do, or, you know, and sometimes it, like, sometimes our middle eight would be a middle 80. It would like go off. And I loved that. And so, and you know, other people might hate it, which I think maybe you might hate it, but but
Yeah.
it's music, right?
Yeah.
And it's still a thing. And I know that you would appreciate it for being a thing, and you might even appreciate not being in the middle of it and
Yeah.
maybe just dancing. And that is
Yeah.
so cool. Like that brings me to another thing. Diversity is this is something. So technology has a tendency to generify things, make things so to make things scalable, you make things modular, plug and playable, generic, you know, reuse things, all of that kind of stuff. Everything looks like Lego or as close to Lego as you can get it, right?
Yeah.
But that what we forget then is the human piece, the diversity of application, the application domains, the people who work in technology. And diversity is a really key, important thing there to get what we're building right. Cannot forget that human beings are not character tokens used in a language model. We are rich, sensitive, empathetic, and r- right now, I think only humans can build those the very best of things in technology for humans. And we shouldn't run away from that.
Mm.
Like it is a struggle, especially now. Everybody loves AI. Everything is
Mm-hmm.
AI is shit. Like it takes me longer to edit some crap written by some language model than if I'd sat there for 20 minutes on a cup of coffee and wrote it out myself.
Yeah.
Like that's the world we're in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like don't underestimate what we've got. Creativity, imagination, large language models, neural networks, they don't work like us. They don't work as fast as us. Output is great. Tools are brilliant. I'm not going to sit here and say I haven't used ChatGPT when
Yeah.
I'm running out the door 30 minutes. I'm like, write me a 4-page report on this and legged it. Of course I
Yeah.
have. I'm
Of
not an
course.
idiot.
Yeah.
but if we want to build the best, be the best, make the world, we have to, you can't sleep at the wheel. You've got to remember who you are, think about the world that you're imagining, that you're creating, practice what you could be coding, you could be like a business analyst, you could be a neuroscientist, you could be a poet, you could be whatever it is. Be that thing that you are, practice it, conjure your audience, and then the very last part is create your legacy. And you don't get to say what it is.
You
This is the
don't.
freaky thing for most artists who love to control everything. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Oh my
Yeah.
God, my legacy.
The ultimate struggle.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
world makes the legacy. The world does. And now that we have so much social media, the chances of you crafting your legacy, oh
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah. I think
They're
the one thing before we end maybe on the legacy piece, I think the one thought that I really want to highlight too is this idea of the struggle, which for me that's a really not new, like I always thought about art. Artists need struggle in order to create, or there is inherent struggle in creation. Um, and in
and in practice,
collaboration
actually.
and in
In
practice.
practice.
Yeah. The just the doing the thing, you struggling every day to do your technique practices, or you struggling to work with a person, or so much struggle. But artists who stick to their craft, which you have done for a long time, they learn to embrace that struggle. Similar to what you described, you have to somehow embrace the struggle and live with it and work with it. And if I look at kind of what happens in business, and now with AI as well, like you have this yes-saying agent who will confidently confirm everything that you put into it and hype you up and be excited because it's meant to be addictive and you're meant to be continue to use it because that's how these corporation makes money. We're losing that. We're losing our ability to deal with struggle. and to live in struggle and to, well, that's a fear. I don't think we're losing it. That might be too far. But that practice of struggling, um, I think
Yeah.
is one thing that,
I do feel confident about it though, because,
okay.
okay, I mean, so fear is one thing,
Yeah.
right? And you're imagining a world that you kind of hate
Yeah.
or you fear. Other people imagine that world and they see it as, leisure and all the
Mm-hmm.
time in the world and all the Rolexes and all the beautiful
All the money.
ladies
Yeah.
or beautiful boys, whatever.
Yeah.
That's what other people see when they see
Yeah.
that, right? But it's still just a world that you're
Mm,
imagining.
mm.
So, innately, humans still have this thing. Fear can be a thing. Like Paul Meehan's words said, words can strip you and make you feel naked, or they can adorn you and make you a panther or make you an elephant or a dolphin or a whale, whatever. I mean, whatever the
Yeah.
yeah,
You whatever you
or
want to
be a
be.
plant. Have you ever dreamt about being a plant, basking in the sun? My God, it's like the best dream I ever had. Was just like, oh my God, I'm a ligustrum. Oh, in the sun, dappled shade. And I woke up I could still remember the feeling of it. Oh man, that and flying. That was kind of cool too. But and I don't usually remember my dreams, so I can remember these ones, these special ones. But like, so back to the main thing, feeling things, like really feeling things and engaging almost like in the abstract with your own like output, your own imaginative creative output, whether that's in the business context or in an artistic context, and really like loving the power of it, whether it's the power of being afraid of an idea that you had, or the power of, oh God, I feel like small. That idea has made me feel so small, like naked and without my feathers. But but if you can feel like that, which are negative emotions, you are also capable of feeling those super powerful emotions, which are not necessarily, it's not narcissism, just as fear is not depression. It's the power of our emotions. That and that sensibility, that capability to feel and connect and do something with it, that doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Like that's our power.
Yeah. And maybe that's a good place to end. That's our power, the emotions. Where can people learn more about you and find you now that they're so excited about what you've been doing?
LinkedIn is a good place. I'm pretty responsive there. Fiona Delaney on LinkedIn.
Fiona, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation and I
Oh,
really appreciate your time.